print media, and Flow magazine is a good example of something that's produced locally. I've invited Paul Miazga from Flow magazine to come and give us some insight into what's left and how he keeps this magazine flowing so strong. Paul, thanks for taking some time.
Not at all.
Coming
Nice
down
to see
here.
you.
When did you start Flow, and how did the origin of this magazine come to be?
Well, when I was I just moved back to the city from living abroad for 10 years in Kiev, Ukraine, actually. And upon returning, I maybe was a bit overqualified or a bit too old for certain positions. And I saw a niche in the city that, although Tourism Saskatoon was covering it to an extent, it was about giving people ideas on where and how to spend time and money in the city. So I decided to provide a reference for that, curated content, and in doing so, started to build relationships in the city with all kinds of people, not just my business clients, but people such as yourself and others. So that was 8 years ago now, not quite 8 years ago. So we're in our 8th year of publishing, and things are very challenging, but a lot of interesting ideas for the future.
I think that's what keeps the genesis of this magazine so alive, is that you know a lot of the people, you know a lot of the places when you do read it. I've seen it in doctors' offices and restaurants. The appeal for it is so wide. Is it important to, this day and age where you have everything on Facebook and electronic media, to actually pick up a magazine? It's not as common. What keeps you going in this format?
There are a couple of things. Certainly the chord that we strike with readers when it comes to producing content that is curated in some fashion. We're not trying to present every event that's going on in the city within a 2-month period. We're not trying to represent all the restaurants. We focus on independent, locally run restaurants. We focus on events that, at least for what we see as our readership, they will find interesting. A mix of events that are free, events that are paid, events that are ongoing or in a time frame, such as a theater performance or maybe a one-off concert. So it's about providing something that, while you can find it online, you would still be doing a lot of searching to find the same kind of content, and maybe having to sift between thrash metal concerts and artisan craft fairs and trade shows going on at TCU Place to find what's really of interest to the reader of Flow magazine.
I think that's why I like it so much, and I hear repeatedly out and about the city. It's also, I've seen in a few smaller towns, the photography, everything is very great quality. What do you must have a mindset or an eye for being in touch with what the reader wants as opposed to what you think you can do in the market like this?
Oh, for sure. One of the things that I've done in creating the magazine is try to mirror other publications that are doing very similar things. There's a nationwide chain called Where Magazine, run out of Toronto, and in addition, there's a Calgary-based magazine called Avenue. So I'm trying to take elements of both of these, which are very aspirational magazines that provide very much the same kind of information as Flow magazine does for their specific markets. And it's about trying to elevate discussion about where we live and the kinds of opportunities there are, the things that we can do. It tries to remain positive, and it's always forward-looking. So we present events that are yet to come as opposed to things that have already happened. We present new restaurants and restaurants that are something out of the ordinary as opposed to chains and things that are rather commonplace. So it's about trying to promote the city, promote individual businesses. And part of that relationship building is part of the magazine itself. I mean, it's not just me imposing ideas on readers and the people that work with me. The quality is there, the ideas are there because we're trying to do something very specific and to make sure that readers each time feel compelled to pick it up. If it was boring content that continued to be kind of copy and paste, I think we would lose a little bit. And we have to try to constantly improve and refresh what we do. But it's also about making sure that when we do choose content, it provides the best possible face for the city. And in so doing, whether it's photos or little bits of interesting information on all kinds of things, it's about trying to reach various readers at different points.
I like that aspect that we have, greatest respect for our neighbors to the south. And when we read a publication that features more about other cities than our own city, I think that's a void that you've nicely filled in. When we recognize so many of the places where the photos are and the people in these articles. What are the challenges when we hear so much about social media? What are the challenges with actually publishing a hard copy from your standpoint?
Well, certainly getting advertisers to understand the costs and benefits of being involved in print advertising. I think social media has to be part of everybody's advertising campaign these days. But as part of any balanced investment portfolio, and advertising is an investment in your business, it's about balancing things. One of the best ways that studies have shown in terms of getting people to come more organically to your social media feeds and to your business in general is to have them find information about your business in a medium, print particularly, that allows them to slow down. It gets them away from the phone where you might get a click and a like on a post, but the more important thing in terms of an advertiser was their message retention. Did someone connect with that business? And having the opportunity to spend a few minutes learning about, say, a Wonder Hub event for young adults, the Picnics Catering, some of the other advertisers, Dakota Dunes Casino, ideas on where and how to spend time and money, but also just this idea that we have content that people find just connects with them in some way.
You mentioned earlier about the concept of letting people know what's out there 2 and 3 months ahead of time and what's coming, and that I find interesting because it's really easy to do a review because you know something's happened, but in order to get there you have to know about it. How do you kind of garner that information about, I guess, relationship building of who's coming, who's going where? Is that a challenge for you sometimes?
Certainly it is. When I first started the magazine, because of the periodicity and with trying to look forward a month, or now, as the case is, 2 months in advance, at the very beginning and when I transitioned from doing Flow as a monthly to a bi-monthly, so that was around 2014, we had to work with a lot of different community organizations, promotional agencies, restaurants, whatever the organization was, in order to get them to provide their information more than just a couple of weeks in advance. Oftentimes the idea has been, well, people know about what's going on in the city, therefore we only need to promote it a couple of weeks in advance. Now, with so many different competing events and venues, different things happening all the time, it's important for me to get that information out sooner. I've had to change the way certain people have done business because they had been used to just handing out information, press releases 2 weeks rather than 2 months or more in advance. That just benefits everyone, because if you can have that message out there sooner and have it out in a format that stays around and doesn't easily get ruffled and thrown in at the bottom of the scrap heap, that's a benefit to them. One of the things I like about the magazine is because it's meant to be more tactile and a refined magazine compared to, say, newsprint publications, it lasts longer. People want to look at it again and again, and an ad in this magazine, even 6 months or a year down the road, has the same luster that it did when it first came out in virtually all cases, whereas a newspaper is something that's been shuffled once, looks like it's been there for 100 years.
I know that sometimes traveling through hotels and so on, I gravitate to this type of thing that I can carry with me. Sometimes there's not always Wi-Fi, your phone doesn't work or what have you. This must be a useful tool for tourism.
Well, certainly.
To
I mean, one of the things that a number of people are increasingly doing is curating their own time on social media. They're not clicking on every news site. They're not clicking on every feed. They've got a very specific feed that they're receiving. And even at that, there are more and more people who are just spending less time with it. As much as social media is being promoted, there's also a pullback from that. And people want to spend time resting their eyes, doing something a little bit differently. Unlike any other kind of media, in print media, ads are seen as part of the whole package. It's not something to be skipped or ignored or blocked or switched off of. it's meant to be part of the experience because it's about this tactile feel. It's about these things that reinforce the content, and the content reinforces who the advertisers are and what they represent. And it's about supporting local ultimately.
Well, I like that aspect of it, and I think that from what I'm hearing and seeing out there, people can take it and tear pages out of it, looking for this restaurant at this time and so on. The concept of it going forward, what do you see for the next 3 to 5 years for the magazine and for print media in general?
Well, I certainly, in what I'm doing, I certainly want to, and am already doing more in terms of social media posts that reflect what we're doing in the magazine. It had been some time for me to really just get on the ball with regard to that. And it's not that I hadn't thought of it a lot. It's that given that I run a very small outfit, it's very easy for a person to burn themselves out trying to do one thing and run a show largely by themselves. I have lots of freelancers that work with me, but ultimately I do most of what is seen in the magazine, certainly in terms of business development and more. So for me, in terms of trying to go forward, I want to still take those opportunities when I'm meeting with certain people and out and about in the city, taking a photo here. I don't have to post it immediately and disappear into the scrolling and into the hashtags, but I certainly can be mindful of, my readers might like to see that and see something that's reflective of that. My advertisers might like to see some of that. I think in general, people like to see positive things through social media, and likewise, I think now that I've got a different mind for that, that's one thing. Another thing that in general I want to do more of is stuff like this, and getting my face out and getting the message out more about Flow Magazine, which is support local. Get out and instead of ordering in on Skip the Dishes, go to a local restaurant or cafe. Instead of spending a night on Netflix, go to a local theater performance or to the Reme Modern or somewhere else.
Darken the doors of these places. Yeah.
Absolutely. If people ultimately are sitting at home and doing things like ordering food in, as opposed to picking up a magazine and realizing, wow, there's a lot going on in the city. There's a lot that we could do, and we could support that, and that money in turn supports the local economy. I mean, 90 cents out of every dollar spent locally stays in the community.
So tell us, people wanted to get a hold of you or get copies of Flow, how would they do that?
So copies of Flow are available at many different locations around town, all libraries and civic centers, many different grocery stores, but also independent local restaurants, cafes, salons, spas, theater outlets, and what have you. But in terms of contacting me directly, the best email to reach me at is info@freshwestmedia.com. Fresh West Media is the company I created to publish Flow, and so info@freshwestmedia.com.
Thank you, Paul. I want to wish you all the best with this very beautiful magazine.
Thank you, Randy.
And we'll see you around again, I'm sure.
Right on. Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.